tell you what, I'm just so thrilled that you're speaking at the conference, which is great. But honestly, Dave, like when it comes to when I listen to what you do with youth and your heart for people, like I just think this is where it's at. And I mean, maybe before we even talk about youth, we should talk about the fact that you still skateboard on like
Yeah,
skate parks. Like what?
I know. I actually just got right before this. It's called Old Man Skate at our youth center. So that's on Wednesday night. So I actually just got home about half an hour ago, and I didn't break anything. So that's how I know it's a good night.
Have you? Have you broken something?
No, I've actually. I do all kinds of sports, and for some reason, skateboarding is like you can't skateboard or like I do extreme type sports and not get hurt or fall. Like it's impossible. But I've actually never had a serious injury in my entire life, which is quite strange, actually.
Wow, that's
So
amazing. And have you been
still in one piece.
right? I love it. I would not be. I would fall down just trying to like skate down the street. But have you
Yeah.
been skating for a while?
Uh, 33. Yeah, 33 years, 34 years maybe. And anyways, keeps me young. Like, anyways, it's been great because I have like a great community of guys my own age, but then really in all the surrounding towns, I know all the kids and youth and their parents who are at the skate parks and everything too. So it's been a great connection point too. But I think it helps keep you young, I guess.
Oh, I would say, wow. And they must just think that you're the coolest guy ever. Like if I saw someone like on a skateboard and doing your thing, I would be like, now that's a really cool man right there.
Yeah. You know what? There's all these videos on YouTube of, young people where they dress up as older people and they take them to different places to do sports. And of course, they get all these reactions. So, I guess I do live that sometimes if I'm going to a place where I've never been and no one knows me. It's like, he's too old. He could actually hurt himself. He better stop. But anyways, I'm still going. And I'm not the same as when I was like in my 30s. We used to travel like skateboarding and competing when we were younger. And not at that level, but still just enjoy getting out with everybody.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. And like tell me about like youth. Like how did you get started with working with youth and why do you care about them so much?
Yeah, you know what? I've always it's almost 20 some years working with youth in different capacities. I started off as a youth pastor and working at several different churches, and it's been an interesting journey because when I think about what I'm doing now, it's not exactly what I set out to do, but it's kind of like, where you evolve and what you learn to do. And so I've worked in totally different types of settings. I've worked in rural Nova Scotia, and then I was in Oakville, Ontario, which is the complete polar opposite of where I live now. So that would be like one of the more well-off type communities in Canada, which I love working there. And right now I live in one of the poorest communities. And so we're kind of like urban rural, like right around us is about where I live now is about 100,000 people. So it's not super small, but it's not really big either. And really the last couple of years, and I think this is what more people are getting to know us by, is when we moved back to Cape Breton. I actually lived here for a while when I was young. I think it was learning to understand what it would take to see a community changed, that it's really begin to form what we do and why we do it. And it's taken me almost a lifetime to figure that out, like not just to have a short-term effect, but if we want to see community transformation, what should we do? And we kind of came up with this idea of what we do around our work with youth when it comes to community transformation.
Wow. So you have to tell me about that because you say community transformation and I light up because that's my whole resilience work and my research and
Mm-hmm.
my nerding out is all about how do we do that. So how do
Yeah,
you do that through art?
well, this is where I've always landed with this in my community. So this is what would make where I work a little bit unique. Most of Canada has been able to deal, for example, with its child poverty issues, where like it's not getting worse. Where I live in Nova Scotia, our child poverty rates have continued to go up. And in our part of the province, Cape Breton, it's actually worse than anywhere else. We have communities between, 40% to 75% of all the kids, which really is family poverty. But we have communities where 75% of the people are living below the poverty line. And what makes this area unique is, say you'd have a city and you'd have a pocket of a city who would have that kind of poverty, but we have whole communities, like the whole community's living in that level of poverty. And then that has affected our addiction rates, and our addiction rates are not leveled here, they're actually going up. And so, for example, the amounts of needles that get exchanged, we've had years where it's gone up 25% in 1 year, year after year. And so, everyone's trying to figure out in our community, like, how do we address, it's like you're trying to put out this giant fire. And so this whole thought, like, well, what could you ever do to stop the fire? And it's like, everyone's going around doing their little piece. But if you're in an area and every issue is like going up, until you stop the flow, you're always going to be dealing with more and more problems. So it really hit us that to cause community transformation, what we need to do is actually create a turnaround generation. And so until we stop the amount of kids going into addiction, we're always going to be just dealing with more and more, because that's where our numbers have been going. And so our goal is like, well, let's create a turnaround generation. And then actually the next generation is going to look different. And so we've really thought about community transformation in what we do with young people specifically. Like, so how can we make every young person in our community successful, and how can we help each one succeed? How do we help every young person who doesn't have a family? How can we be family for them? Or how do we help kids whose their biggest issue is that they don't have a safe home? So how can we be a safe place? And so we've really thought about community transformation, about starting with kids and youth. And maybe that's a little bit unique to us, but that's kind of where we've landed.
Wow, I love that so much. And I love that it's youth, but it's also, home. Like you said, like, what can we do about home? Right?
Oh,
Like,
100%.
yeah, like when I think of poverty, and I think when a lot of people think of poverty and just the issues that go on in our Canadian soil that's not overseas, like, living below the poverty line, we often just throw our hands up like, I don't know what to do. And so what you're
Mhm.
doing is really important to get the word out so that people can go, oh, there is something we can do. It's not just something that, oh, well, guess that's the way it is. Like, you're choosing to say, actually, let's do something about it. What would you say?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, what would you say to someone like who wants to make a difference in their community, um, wants to make a real difference? Like, where do you feel they could start?
I think being able to address and to understand who in your community actually, without someone in their life, is really not, the chance of them succeeding or getting out of this situation is really low. And like, how do you identify who those are? And then do something super simple. I just believe the beginning point is just blessing people. Because I think like the minute that someone understands they have value, it changes everything. The minute that someone understands they have someone who's in their corner or someone who's going to cheer them on. And so like everyone's trying to think of like these grand, amazing things. Like we run all kinds of programs. I love all those. Honestly, some of the best things, what I think I do, like last night, I took 4 kids out to Boston Pizza with me and we just sat and talked. And, but I've gotten to know those kids that I took out last night, and I'm invested in their lives, and they know that no matter what, they have a person in their life who's going to be there for them. And so, we're always trying to find these big extravagant things, which sometimes we need to do. Like the poverty and addiction issue in our community is so big. We actually have to think on a big scale too. But the starting point is just, what are you doing for one person? And that's taking someone out. Like my gift in life is taking people out to eat. Like 90% of what I do, that's probably it. And just letting people know that they have someone who care about them. And so it doesn't have to be, we're always thinking about these large scale things. Letting someone know that they are loved, cared for, and they have someone who will just be there for them, to listen to them, help them when they need some help. And that to me is the starting point.
Yeah. Well, and in resilience studies, kids that who are resilient had one person. They had a Dave. They might not have
Yeah.
had, a parent. They might not have had any kind of teachers that, but they had one person. And like honestly, if I think about even in my own life, and I personally don't have any youth at risk background in me, like my own journey, but when I think about the youth leader that I had growing up, I wouldn't be who
Mhm.
I am. I wouldn't be doing what I do without his influence. And I think
Yep.
how much more is that when like when somebody doesn't have anybody? Like how powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
like you said too.
realized,
Hmm?
yeah, I brought a guy through a while ago who wanted to do a tour of our center. And I brought him into this one program. And there's probably 15 kids in this. Like it's a life skills program for junior highs. And I walked in, and we're just doing a tour, and like all these kids run up, hug me, say hello, and stuff. And I've then showed him everything that we're doing, and then we went out for supper, which is again my gift. And so he's asking me, he's like, "You must spend so much time with those kids," because he said they obviously like think so much of you, and like, and I was like, actually, that I don't even run that program. I said I spend 5 to 10 minutes a week with those kids, and it really led me into a conversation with this guy. Is I just said I'm maybe one of the few people who even give 5 to 10 minutes of positive something into these kids' lives, and it was such an eye opener to me about sometimes how little it takes to change someone's attitude or to give someone hope. And but I try to spend way more time with some kids than that. But it was such a lesson that we're trying to always think on this big scale. But I realized this one day that somehow even 5 to 10 minutes with some kids that I don't even spend a lot of time with actually meant so much to them.
Mm.
And that's why I think there's a part that every one of us can play, whether it's 5 minutes or it's 5 hours. But I've seen how much difference even 5 minutes makes. And I also see, the difference that 5 hours or a lifetime makes as well. But anyways, it was such an eye opener for me. And this guy, it was such an incredible moment. Like it actually changed the way I think about so much now. Like, let's just encourage people all the time.
Yeah. I honestly like that really is simple, but it is so doable. One of the things that we've been talking about in mental health is this idea that why do we make it so complicated? Why do we feel like it needs to be so grand or so deep, or you have to be a psychologist? Like there are
Yeah.
places. I certainly know my role. I know my limits. I know when to refer, but it's about caring about the individual. I think about a lot of the youth that I used to work with, and a lot of the behaviors and a lot of the things that they would get into, many times they just needed someone to understand, to seek to understand, to listen. I even think about my own 14-year-old. That's all he wants from me. He just wants me to listen.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah. We this year we ran this one program I'm running. Probably run it different than anything else. So we started with a group of kids, and we talked to them about what are the things that you're stressed out about, bring you anxiety, and everyone's got a list. And then just ask, what are the things that in your life? So we didn't present the answers. Just like what do you do in your own life that makes you feel better? Someone's told you to try, and everyone they have identified their own list. And so over the past couple of weeks, for example, so they said, I listen to music. And so we run this one program we're doing, I think, is one of the best things that we do. But basically, all we've done is what the kids have said. So one of them talked about how like music has been like, when they're by themselves, music's been an outlet. So I just asked someone who does music to come in and talk about their journey. And then someone else said, just being outside and doing stuff. So we did like one evening thing up in the mountains. And we basically just did what all the kids said have helped them. And it's been it's been the easiest thing. Like we're all, again, I think we overcomplicate things. That the youth themselves identified things in their own life that make them feel better. So all we did was try to encourage the things that they said make them feel better and give them an actual opportunity to do them. And it's been honestly, it's been such an amazing experience, and we didn't even have to come up with the ideas ourselves. It was like one of them said, talked about having a meal together. Okay, I'm good at that. Anyways, I've actually loved this whole idea, but just listening to youth and let them they're actually aware of things that make them feel better. So we're like, well, let's go do them. And so this whole fall, and tonight was the first night after Christmas. That's all we've been doing is all the things that they say to make them feel better about, how they're dealing with anxiety and their stresses. And and I love it. I love being able to provide an opportunity. That's what I love. One of the most simple programs we've ever done, because all we're doing is taking an idea and then we go do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. When it comes to, say, youth addiction, like I know a lot of parents, because I work with some parents now, and they're all worried, like, oh no, like addictions and weed, and I just feel like there needs to be more understanding. Like, what do you notice around addiction with youth? Like, why do they
Well,
go there?
now I can only speak about, I've been 15 years in Cape Breton, and we have an out of control addiction problem. So I don't know if our situation's the same as most places. Our biggest issue that I'm having with their youth right now when it comes to addiction is that their parents are addicts. And so their whole home life is around addiction. Like over 50% of all young adults that would have kids in Cape Breton are problem drinkers. So every kid has at least one parent who's a problem drinker. And that's not even with their like our pill problem or needle issues or anything like that, or opiates. So we have a lot of kids who are hurt because of addiction. So it's not even just battling, they're hurt, their whole lives or family lives or home lives have been robbed from them because of addiction. So there's some anger about addiction. And then you have I have youth they started doing their journey with addiction started with doing drugs with their parents. And so I get angry because of what's going on in people's houses. And so you couldn't find a young person in my community who doesn't know a friend or someone who's died because of addiction. My first 10 years when I moved back to Cape Breton, every funeral I did was either an overdose, suicide, accident, and everything was drug or alcohol related, almost every single one. And so when I think of addiction here, we have a group of people who don't want anything to do with it. And then we have a lot of people who are there's such despair because of what they've seen that, a lot of people get sucked into that as well. But I've never lived in a place that I've had so many, we just don't deal with addiction here, we deal with death. Because our addiction has moved into, we just have a lot of opiate related deaths and that's from suicides to, anyways, that's the reality of where I live. And that's when I think about this whole idea of community transformation, to me, it's not just our poverty and addiction seem to be so intertwined. Then our role is, okay, how can we help kids not fall back into that trap that they've grown up in, even though maybe that's all they've ever seen. And so again, that's to me back to our community transformation. Like that's when I think about addiction.
I love it. I love that. So Dave, what are you thinking of for the future when it comes to what you're doing out there? Do you think you'll be out there
Oh,
long term? Is this it?
yeah, 100%. We're actually, I never stopped working, but we've been so blessed doing this here that it's actually been enjoyable to have such community buy-in. And it's one of the things about being in a place for so long. We've been consistently helping hundreds of kids and youth on a weekly basis for years. And so we've expanded into, we have a second center open now where I'm in meetings this week about another center in another community. And it's night and day. When we're starting off, it was like fighting to get anything off the ground, where now we have a voice here. and it's so much easier to get stuff done. It doesn't mean it's not easier work, but it's a different day. And so we are thinking about, okay, I live on an island. Is how can we see this island change? So when I'm talking with different levels of government and committees that we're talking with now, we are really talking about island transformation and how we can be part of creating an entire different generation here in Cape Breton.
Wow. And I think that you're so dead right. Like, it takes time and consistency and building trust and sticking around and showing up when it's hard. That's I think that you're such a walking visual of, like, this is kind of what it takes. And like you said, you show up long enough and people are like, we can trust. You want a building? You want to, what do you need? What do you need? Now instead of you hustling from the ground up, people are surrounding you and wanting to support. And yet so many of us want to start there.
Yeah, no, listen, it wasn't always like that. Like, I know everyone wants to be doing this, but they forget, like, I actually remember when we got given our first building, everyone thought, oh, such a miracle. Someone gave you a building. No, it was a disaster. We didn't have occupancy for 4 years. And I remember spending months inside working and just doing crack filling by myself, thinking this is never going to happen, just being depressed over the whole thing. But it was that investment in our community, and people understood, okay, they're actually sticking it out. And now it's different, but I'm telling you, it's been a crazy journey.
Oh, community transformation starting with crack filling by yourself.
Yes. rebuilding stuff. So anyways, but that's what I got to say. It's worth sticking around in a place till you gain trust. A lot of people never get that opportunity because they don't stay somewhere long enough. And I saw it over Christmas time. Like, we always help different families out, take food out. Almost everywhere I went, people just let me in their house because they know who I am. Like, in neighborhoods, like I could like go down the street and almost go into anyone's house. And that wouldn't have been like that years ago, but it actually really hit me this Christmas because I got to see some things that were really upsetting to me. But I realized I've been invited into that setting now because people know that I'm not there for any other reason other than just to be friends with them.
Mm.
And I'm glad I've stayed in a community till that's happened. And I think you can only get better from here. I think you see worse things, but you have more opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So.
Yes, it does make sense. Wow. Well, I'm encouraged to keep sticking it out, wherever I'm wanting to create change. And I hope that everyone listening is seeing a living example of what can happen when you just decide to show up. When you say a simple yes, and then
Yeah.
I don't know what your cycle of yes has looked like, yes, no, maybe, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Like,
I don't know if you knew the whole story at the beginning, you'd ever say yes, right? It's like you get a little piece at a time because you'd be scared if you knew what the whole story would be. But you start.
but you start, and now look, like, I just love it. I often, when I scroll and I see your posts on Instagram or Facebook, I'm so encouraged. And I'm always like, I'm a big fan, Dave. Anyone who loves youth, I love them. And anyone who sticks things out, I have enormous respect for you and just what you're doing. And I'm so thankful that you're going to be speaking at our conference and sharing about, what's going on. I don't think people realize, when I think of the Maritimes, I don't think of mental illness and addiction. I think of,
Yeah.
let's go hang out on the dunes.
Yeah. I know it's such an interesting place to live because Cape Breton, where I live, well, the Maritimes in general, but we are such a friendly place. We have some of the most incredible landscape, and we have incredible people. And I hope everyone doesn't think, because I talk about like my community and poverty stuff, that they think, well, that's everything. It's not everything. It's just we have a higher percentage of that than in some places. But we have such great people here, and like even the people who are struggling here, they are the friendliest group of people. It's like it's such a strange mix but it makes life interesting, I guess, too.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful, it's a great place to be.
Aw. Well, one day it is actually on my bucket list to come and visit you. And now, especially that I hear that the way you like to do community is through food. I'm like, I'm in. Let's,
Yes, you're in. That is a Cape Breton way. And honestly, right now, Cape Breton is the safest place in the world to be. So it's another great reason to be here. I guess you can't travel here right now, but we have 0 cases of.
Well, when you said you
Anyways,
went to, yeah, because
we've
you said
been
you went
very
to Boston
fortunate.
Pizza, and I was like, what? You went to Boston Pizza?
We're not in lockdown here at all. You know what? I gotta say, like, I know everyone's down on levels of government and upset about stuff, but Nova Scotia jumped in ahead of anyone else. Like had this like 14-day travel. You had to quarantine. Like they've been doing this since early summer. We put masks in place, and we have almost completely avoided what everyone else has. And so we've had this week, most days, 2 to 3 cases in the entire province. Well, everyone else is, the complete opposite. And anyways, the great news is everyone doesn't know this great facts about Cape Breton. At the end of the movie World War Z, which was, of course, a giant plague that hit the earth, the movie ends in Cape Breton because it was the last safe place to be. And so Brad Pitt and the crew knew Cape Breton was the place to be. So that's where the movie ended, as the safe place. And that's where I'm sitting right now, and we are not in lockdown. So what a turn of events.
Apocalyptic training, everybody. Like,
Yes.
yeah, as soon as COVID lifts and everywhere else, we're all coming for you.
You can come visit for sure.
Well, thanks for meeting with me. Thanks for taking the time. When we're recording this, it's a little later at night, at least late for me, but Dave's a party animal. Look at him. He's got his beverage.
I'm ready to go.
Just came home from skateboarding with the guys. So anyways, no, thank you so much, Dave. You're just such a gem, and you're doing great things, and just sending you all of our love from Western Canada, and we'll see you on Bell Let's Talk Day.
All right. Thanks for putting all that together. It's going to be great. So make sure you tune in and watch everything.